Our next speaker is very interesting. Next speaker is Dr. Uma Ladiwala. Uma Ladiwala is a scientific researcher in the field of neuroimmunology and worked in renowned institutions in Sweden, in Canada, and even in TIFR in Mumbai. She has several articles in various publications in reputed international journals. She has also trained and continues to train schools, science teachers in schools. She, after retirement, says that she is doing a lot of art and painting. She conducts workshops in free art expression as well as science communication. She used to trek in the Himalayas quite a lot, and at the Rishikesh ashram she met Swami Brahmavidananda, and that's when her interest in spirituality and Vedanta actually surfaced, and then she started following it. So Dr. Uma Ladiwala is going to talk to us about meditation. Meditation is a very intrinsic part of the teachings of the Vedas. So what role does it have? And meditation and the workings of a body part that I don't have, which is the brain, is what she's going to talk about, and how it affects the brain as we meditate. Dr. Uma Ladiwala, we are fortunate to have you. Please come.
Does anything more need to be said, really? The answers are all there. So, but as he said, there are things that are functional, there are things that contribute to knowledge, there are things that are beneficial. So one of the ways of coming to the truth I found was through my passion for research and science. And initially Swamiji asked me, he says, can you talk about consciousness and the brain? I said, no, please, please don't do this. In fact, even till this day, science hasn't really dealt with this issue of what is consciousness. Well, for a couple of reasons. One is funding was never very good for this because, well, I suppose, how can this kind of a topic make money? Okay, those are generally, that's very often a consideration with funding for research. And secondly, it's really, really hard to, sort of study this with the requirements of science. And so most often this was pushed to the side, and till this day it remains the hard problem, consciousness and the brain. So I told Swamiji, I said, please let me just stick to meditation and the brain. Recently there's been a lot of studies done on this topic, and at least I can talk about it rather than just saying the hypothesis. So today the topic is meditation and the brain. So can you tell me how many of you at any time have practiced meditation? I think just, well, I can see the large majority. Okay, and how many still practice meditation regularly? Wow, that's impressive. Because you and I don't. Okay, and now the next question, how many have been practicing meditation for somewhere between 5 to 10 years or more? Okay, very good, not bad. This is really impressive. Well, I think this talk might be of interest to you there, because lately there's been a number of research papers on people who meditated both for a long time and a short time. Next slide, please. Okay, for a moment, close your eyes, settle comfortably in your seats, place your feet firmly on the ground, relax. Relax your body. Take regular breaths. And now just focus on your breath first. Inhalation, expiration. Inhalation, expiration. Now be aware of what is passing through your mind, your thoughts, any feelings. Now bring up feelings of love and compassion, first for the people immediately in your vicinity around you. Let this feeling expand slowly. Keep expanding to include the whole hall, right till the periphery. Take a deep breath. Gently open your eyes. Okay, move your limbs and come back. Next thing. Yeah. Okay, so would anybody like to share, maybe in not more than a sentence, what was the experience in this very brief few minutes? Anyone?
The happiness and the compassion about our surroundings I felt that time. Since long I am practicing meditation.
Okay, more about what you felt in these 5 minutes. What did you notice that was different from before and after this time?
Actually, my way was meditating was different than this one what you teach. I was just holding my, concentrating on my breathing. But the thoughts came, again I have to remove those thoughts. But here I felt that very less thoughts of it.
Okay. Anyone, one more person? Anyone else? Sure. Okay. Okay, great. I mean, this is exactly 5 minutes, okay? Not longer. And already, you know, I mean, I'm sure I could ask many of you, but we don't have time. And already 2 people share, you know, less thoughts, feeling a part of everybody. So even 5 minutes of this, and you can see a difference, okay? So the question is then, therefore, what is this meditation? And really, it's very hard to define. I mean, of course, the process of science, if you want to research it, it needs some definition, it needs to be precise. There's a lot of hard work involved, okay, because you want to study something, it has to undergo a very rigorous process. But still, and this is hard to define because it's a process that is based on so many different types of techniques that, some sort of things have been outlined, but if you were to just sit in a place, you got the meditation posture, but you fall asleep, it's not meditation. Okay, just because you sat in the posture and you fell asleep, that's not meditation. If you sat in a certain posture and you're thinking about your plans for tomorrow, or you're thinking about some gossip, that is not meditation. Okay, so this is directed attention, it's intentional, and in certain types of meditation, this comes to sort of watching, it's non-judgmental attention. Okay, you're just looking. Next. So what is commonly been described by many people who meditate and doing this kind of meditation, there's a state of witnessing. Okay, witness or choiceless awareness, which means you just watch, you go back deeper within yourself, and as Swamiji has talked about, bring about a state of awareness which is choiceless. Okay, next. Now the Dalai Lama has initiated since about the year 2000 or around that time, he's initiated a huge amount of research. He's gathered together some of the topmost neuroscientists from the US and from Europe, and he's started a kind of a virtual institute called the Mind and Life Institute, because he was really interested that science should research into Buddhist monks who've been meditating for a long time. And the Dalai Lama has said, I quote him, that if every 8-year-old in the world is taught meditation, the world would be without violence within one generation. And let's see what science finds on research about this. Is this true or not? Okay, next. So a little brief history of meditation. Of course, as would be expected, the earliest mentions about this are actually from wall art in, as would be expected, India. This was around 5,000 or to 3,500 BC, and the written description of meditations comes from the Chandogya Upanishad, which was, please correct me if I'm not right, it's about 1,500 BC. Then, of course, meditation was practiced in various other religions, even Sufism, part of Islamic religion, of course the Buddhist traditions in various countries, and then it was taken to the West and made very visible in the 1920s by Yogananda, Sri Paramahansa Yogananda, who gave numerous talks in the West. And following that, a very, very early publication, research publication, meditation in 1936 came about. Then, of course, there was a little gap, not much research, because earlier research, for scientific research, you need tools, okay, to look into something, to study something. And earlier, a lot of research on the brain was done on animals. I mean, not bad in the sense, research had to be done that way, but a little difficult to find, insight into things. I mean, it would be hard to imagine how to get a rat to do yoga or meditation, or a monkey. I mean, the monkey, heard about monkey mind. So of course, that's for a reason that it would be very hard to study these things. So not very much came out for a long time, and then as more precise tools came about to study these sort of things in the human brain, then there was this sudden advance of papers that came out then. Next slide. So scientific findings at the moment, as things stand, talk about the effects of meditation on the brain and the body, of course, and behavior changes primarily. Okay, next. And this is, can be studied because it's now, since about 2 decades, it's realized that a brain is not a fixed structure, that things can have effects or impacts on it, and it has an ability to change. Now, earlier, actually, there was this theory and a belief that your brain developed till your late 20s or 30s, and then after that it was all downhill. Okay, so you lost brain cells, they died of course, and that was too bad. That was the end of it. So, you know, from there on it was just degeneration. And fortunately for us, there's hope. Okay, so since about the last 3 decades, you know, it was found out that the brain actually has a certain amount of flexibility. It's not a fixed structure, and this ability for the brain to change is termed as neuroplasticity. Okay, meaning it's plastic in its nature. Okay, thanks. So how does this come about? You know, I mean, how does this, how do these changes come about? Okay, so it's known that what we do with the mind influences the structure and function of the brain. Okay, of course, the structure and function of the brain is a two-way thing, also influences the mind, but vice versa, this is there. And there are two ways this can happen. Well, okay, let me go a little bit into, you know, like the cellular structure of the brain. So the brain is this jelly-like, you know, like walnut-like organ in our heads. It weighs about 1.2 to 1.4 kilos. And the basic unit of the brain is a cell called the neuron. Okay, there are many different types that make up the brain, but each has like a basic structure of a cell body and long processes. So the cell bodies are arranged, packed together very densely, and totally on average, the number of neurons in an adult brain would be about 100 billion. Okay, how many zeros is that? Well, anyway, 100 billion is the figure. And so from each sort of cell body, even the shape of the cell is not always round, it sort of varies, but there are processes that are interconnected to each other. So say one neuron it makes thousands of interconnections, not only with other cells close by, but even far away. And then there's usually a very long process called the axon, which is surrounded by a lipid, and these packed together make the appearance white. So therefore you must have heard the term gray matter or white matter. So thinking about how many connections there must be in each of our brains, the figure would be somewhere about 100 trillion. Okay, I mean, it's mind-boggling when you think about it, that there is all this amazing complexity, and yet we function, maybe not always very efficiently, but we go on. So now what happens is that when you do, either when you think a certain thought, or when you do some action or some activity, so the neurons communicate with each other by electrical impulses. Okay, so when you do a certain activity or think a certain thought, there's a certain pathway of interconnected neurons, and these fire together. Okay, so what the neuroscientists have always said, that neurons that fire together wire together. So if you use a certain pathway, that the next time that it becomes easier for that pathway to be used, and the firing and the passage of electrical impulses is much quicker. Okay, so you have a tendency to keep using that particular pathway each time, and that is a basis for the formation of habit. So I'm going to a very, very cellular level. So of course, if you had to change something, you would have to do something different. Something has to affect this particular pathway, okay, formation, and an alternative pathway has to be used. So that's the cellular basis of, one of the cellular basis of change. The other one, the other one is that, good hope for us, that we have cells in our brain called stem cells, okay? And these, their function is just to keep producing new brain cells. So this function, of course, slows down with age, and that's why you sometimes see degeneration does happen. But new brain stem cells are particularly, new brain cells are produced regularly even in adult brains, they have something to do in areas concerning memory and learning. Okay, that's one. And secondly, sometimes when the brain gets damaged, also repair does happen, with these brain stem cells. So with the use of these two cellular modalities, changes can be brought about. Next. So you have something like meditation, where we discussed that with meditation a certain watching, witnessing or awareness comes up. Okay, so this is the kind of rough map of how changes would happen. So first you have to have internal changes happen, and following that you can get external changes. Let me give you an example. Suppose, I talked about you want to break or change a certain habit. Say when you get bored or stressed, you get this sudden urge, let me go to the fridge for a chocolate, as somebody mentioned, right? That you love chocolate, but it's not good for your diabetes, it's not good for your weight. You know that, but you can't help it. Because why? You have this pathway in your brain, I want a chocolate, and you go follow and you get the chocolate, or cigarette, or mobile phone, you name whatever your addiction is, fine. So you want to change it, what happens? You meditate. And in that witnessing state, you become aware of this urge that you desire a chocolate, okay? But if another awareness comes up, no, it's not good for me, I shouldn't be doing this, okay? You have an option and a choice to respond to it by not giving into it. And when you do that, actually you made a slight change in that brain pathway. Okay, you've taken the first step to break the habit. And of course, if you keep doing this regularly, eventually that thought won't even come up, because what happens is actually when you don't use a certain pathway, there's a physical change and that connection shrinks and disappears. Okay, they have found this, that those just connections dissolve. So then of course there is decreased stress, your health improves, and similarly you can apply this to various things. The relationships can improve, and so this is the way that the broad mechanism of change happens. Next. So thus far so when I'm now discussing some of these things, as I said, there are many different types of meditation. Some have been studied more, some have been studied less, but in this talk, I will talk about the findings mainly related to the mindfulness meditation, which has been followed by Buddhist monks and the Dalai Lama, etc. Because a lot of work has been done there. Okay, it's not my personal preference. It's only because recently I would say there are about 1,000 publications or so, which is not a lot, but it's still a little more than what it used to be. So they find that meditation improves stress. Of course, you all must have noticed that one of the most helpful things is you relax. Okay, your body relaxes. Okay, that's the first thing that happens. And if you were to measure your blood cortisol, now cortisol is a substance that is secreted, it comes into your body in response to stress. Okay, it's known as the stress hormone. And too much of this, of course, has very damaging effects on various organs of the body. So meditation, they found, lowers cortisol. Okay. Secondly, it has very beneficial effects on all kinds of intellectual ability, whether it's memory, whether it's attention, but all types of cognition. Thirdly, it's very conducive, it improves emotional regulation. Okay, if you tend to get very angry and or you have a lot of negative thoughts, just doing this awareness exercise helps tremendously with emotion regulation. And next, of course, physical and immune function is very improved. I mean, it was always known that, there was this connection between, say, biochemicals that are found in the immune system and the brain. In fact, very similar chemicals, like the immune chemicals act on the brain and brain chemicals act on the immune cells, okay? So there's a very strong connection between your brain and immune system. So, stress which affects the brain can affect, it's your experience that, if you get very stressed, your immunity goes down, you'll be susceptible to various illnesses, okay? Have any of you noticed this? That before, a significant illness or even a minor illness, you somehow have realized that you've been stressed before that, okay? So then, and lastly, of course, psychological function is improved, They've found lots of evidence that things like anxiety, depression, fear, all these improve a lot with just meditation, okay? Next. So now, of course, one of the things that science demands that, things have to be measured. So, if it's not measurable, really most of science will leave it aside, okay? So this is where a big limitation, because the fact is, we'll see there are things that are not measurable, but at the moment, we have to stick to that, because if you just give a self-report that this is my experience of meditation, it's valid, okay, because you experience it, but it cannot be enough scientific evidence because it's subjective, okay, and it's difficult to quantitate. So science also demands large amount of data, experiments to show that this is the cause, this is the mechanism. So quantitation, statistics, all these have to be there. It's a very rigorous process, but it has its uses. For example, we've come a long way even with whatever research has been done, and in spite of the limitations. And as somebody said, it's not the hard and fast fixed truth in most cases. Things are changeable, okay, and as the tools get better and more refined, so what we consider truth now then changes further, okay, but for now, as I said, the tools that we have to research something like meditation and the brain. One is, say, as I said, the cells of the brain communicate by electrical impulses. So what you can do is actually put electrodes, these things on the skull, and look at the electrical activity. They are sensitive, so they will give you, they will let, you can measure the electrical activity in different areas of the brain. And the other method now that is more recent is called MRI. Have any of you been in an MRI scanner? MRI stands for magnetic resonance imaging. So yeah, quite a few. Okay, and I'll explain to you what is functional MRI. So MRI gives you like a still photo of your brain. Okay, and a functional MRI is like a video of your brain. So it's like a film. It's like filming what is happening in your brain in real time. Okay, so now next. Sorry. This is just to. Is this the next one? Okay. So this is just to tell you that many of the publications have looked at meditators who, have been practicing these various types of meditation. Next. I think something's missing. Okay. It's okay. So of course. Even if you do these investigations, it's a common experience we all have that it's very hard to keep the mind still. That mental states during meditations do fluctuate. So here you see initially you follow your breath very successfully. You also go into deep meditation very successfully, and then suddenly you fall asleep. Okay, you're sitting, and then your head goes down and. Okay, it's uncomfortable and you wake. Then you feel a little hungry, so the thoughts of pizza and burgers comes in. Then suddenly you say, what should I do tomorrow, okay? And then you say, no, let me meditate again. So this is the way it goes on, and so therefore, even if you're assessing, measuring, quantitating, you need a little time for these investigations. Next. So here you see above is the picture of, you see this person having an EEG or electroencephalography, there are like multiple electrodes placed all over the skull, and the trace of the electrical activity is recorded here, and from that you can tell a number of things. So this is the MRI scanner here, and it's similar to what you have for a fixed MRI, but of course very uncomfortable, claustrophobic thing. So anyway, but it gives a lot of information. It's a very, very sensitive tool. Next. And so if you were to do an EEG, generally in ordinary people, you would see these kind of waves, okay? So right on top, you have the what? So it depends, the different types of waves are of different frequency, meaning speed, okay? Some are very fast, some are slower in some circumstances, and also the height of the waves, the amplitude is what make, that's also what you can use to define them. So in normal alert awake situations, most of us will have these kind of waves called beta waves. Then if you're doing a light, relaxed, calm meditation, you will see that you will be in the slower alpha wave. In fact, I recall this from years ago that J. Krishnamurti, you all must have heard of him, that they had measured his, looked at his brain waves in the waking state. And it was amazing, but most often in the waking state, most areas of his brain would be in alpha state. I remember this bit of information because it was amazing. Then you have, again, a very much slower wave here, the red thing called a theta wave. And this is in deep meditation and relaxation. And then commonly delta waves, the slowest, are seen in deep sleep, okay, or very rarely deep meditation. So these three are the kind of waves you will see during meditation normally. Next. But what on doing further investigation in Buddhist monks who had been meditating on an average, like every day, several hours a day, for about 15 to 35 years, okay, what they found, there were these, instead of having, either alpha or delta or, theta waves, they had these waves that are called gamma waves. And why have I put this word Zen gamma? Because sometimes gamma waves are seen in people who are not normal, like schizophrenics, okay? And definitely these Buddhist monks were not schizophrenic. So what they found though, that this gamma waves were like very synchronized, meaning very, so normally if you take an EEG, one part of the brain will have beta, different sort of things, but here they found their brains were totally synchronized almost throughout with this kind of a gamma wave. And then they questioned that actually these meditators, because they had meditated so long, had this very heightened perception, awareness state. So they were very alert, but very still as well. Okay, nice. So also Patanjali has described various mental states in his Yoga Sutras about 400 BC, long time back, And of course we don't know whether it really corresponds to this, but he also described chanchalta, which is, your random thinking, ekagrata, which was like non-meditative focusing, dharana, where you had focused meditation which required effort, or dhyana, which was meditation that was effortless, okay, or deep meditation, and probably it might correlate to some of what has been found by EEG and other investigations. Next. So now a bit about what happens, you're all aware of stress and body changes that happen with stress, and so of course you see the changes, quick breathing, blood pressure goes up, heart beats faster. So next. So this was there, actually there's a whole list of these effects that occur with stress, which are very damaging and very bad. Now the human organism was very, it's a response. The stress response was it's biologically there because it's called a fight or flight response, okay? So when humans have to be hunting or they face danger, or even today, if you face actual danger, you need this, okay? And as an acute emergency response, it's very good because your muscles need to be made tense to be able to go and run, okay? Or you need to be able to fight, or you need extra oxygen to be able to do all of this. So there was a reason that this happened. But unfortunately, in our age, in day-to-day, we get small stressors all the time, okay, which is chronic stress, and this is what leads to a lot of damage. So what you find with meditation, that they are finding that there's a relaxation response, and all these parameters are reduced after meditation, okay? Next. So this is because you have two different systems, nervous systems. So one is for your flight or fight, you have what is called, you might remember this from school biology, that you have a sympathetic nervous system, and this is not unsympathetic but parasympathetic, okay, which happens during rest, which is actually activated during meditation too, okay. And you see it has effects on various organ systems here. Next. So now coming to some of the important brain areas involved during meditation by the functional MRI. Okay, so what they find, so this is your brain here. There's brownish, it's more brownish here, not gray. So this is the front part here, this is the back portion above and below. And what they find that this area here in red, it's called the prefrontal area, okay? And it's linked to all executive, what you call higher functions, not just walking, but higher functions like planning, goals, thinking, emotional control, okay? Next. And the next important area that is involved is this inside, okay? So this is a cut section of the brain. You can see outside is the gray matter, inside is the white. And deep inside is a region called the insula. And this is connected to it's connected to body awareness, meaning internal, you sort of awareness of your body and yourself, as also emotional regulation, empathy also. So it's a very important region here. And the third one is something they've discovered, which is called the default network, okay? So this is some regions in the front and the back part of the brain. And this, when you're ordinarily ruminating, sort of going about, your mind wandering, reflection. Sometimes you hear this voice in your head. Of course, some people will, talk to themselves, talk loudly rather than just hearing the voice in it. So all that function is what is called your default network. Okay, so it's like something talking within yourself. Next. So what they find that with long-term meditation, that's again 15 to 30 years or so, that there is increased gray matter in these areas, the insula and prefrontal areas that I talked about. And increased gray matter means increased number of cells, right? Because the gray matter I said is, the number of neurons that are there. So there is increased gray matter in this area here, and decreased gray matter in a region called the amygdala. And the amygdala is now, it's an almond-shaped gray matter deep inside the brain, and this is concerned with, very hard emotions like fear, anger, aggression, okay? So with meditation, the thickness of this reduces and the size of this reduces. Also, the thinning of gray matter that does occur in old age, that is reduced as well with meditation, and that is really desirable for all of us. Next. So now, coming to attention itself, that it's being found that in your day-to-day life, you can look outside. Everything's happening in the world around you. You have to look outside. You have to look when you cross the road. You have to look when you're reading. Have to look at your mobile phones, read. So when that happens, most often, most of us are not aware of what is going on inside. Okay, so in a way, this inner default network, so the internal or default network acts when you're not looking outside. So you might need to close your eyes, or sit quietly. So these are mutually exclusive in normal, ordinary people. But they found that in long-term meditators, both these can work simultaneously. So even while they are functioning in the outer world, they can be aware of what's going on inside, and that's what we all aim towards, right? Next. So what about, so this is all long-term meditation. I mean, those of us, at least not even me, who have been meditating for 15, 30 years, you wonder, but what is the hope for us? Where 15, 30 years more? I don't even know even whether I have so many years more. But the good news is that a study done at Harvard by a neuroscientist, she's young, called Sarah Lazar, she started a program and found that even 8 weeks of meditating 30 minutes a day had a very beneficial effect on all various things, psychologically, on depression, anxiety, aggression, on chronic pain, even on an autoimmune disease like psoriasis. Next. And in fact, even in 8 weeks, physical changes were seen in the brain. Okay, so there is increased gray matter in regions associated with memory and learning. So here, this green thing they call the hippocampus. So that is the structure where the brain stem cells are there, and this is linked to memory and learning. So it improved, even in 8 weeks of meditation, improved memory and learning. And even in the amygdala, in this orange thing with the arrow pointing in that little bulbous structure here, that again, even the gray matter reduced there. So these changes were found in that short a time. So probably the Dalai Lama was quite correct, that yes, I think meditation has the potential really to reduce violence and aggression and other negative emotions. So this is just an MRI showing that, yes, of course, as I said, most of the data that I mentioned comes from studies on mindfulness meditation, and meditation does differ in different effects on the brain and some of the other types, but overall it's seen that there are many beneficial effects to all kinds of meditations. So of course, most of the studies have looked at physical changes, effects on physiology, mental changes, on health, psychology. So what about, there's still much more to be researched, Like for example, what about, can science really find out whether meditation done singly or meditation in groups, is there any difference? At least some of us might have experienced that meditation in groups has a better effect, it's easier, I don't know. Also, can you really totally ignore the religious, spiritual and mystical aspect of religion? I mean, from all various people who've experienced this, everybody says it's very important, it's an important part of the effectiveness of meditation, but science has no way to measure this. And then of course, what is the sort of brain, what happens to the brain with enlightenment or awakening, So these are various directions where science is going to have to figure out how can we measure this or how can we study this further. So, still a long way. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much. Any questions that
Wow, thank you so much. That was really fascinating about both the brain and the workings of the brain. I just had one question, and that is that science done any research and found out that men who are married have more Zen gamma rays than men who are not married? Forget it, I was joking. Sorry. Questions to the audience. Anybody has any questions for Dr. Ladiwala? Sir, please state your name and ask the question.
My name is Ranganathan. I want to know whether meditation has any effect on the number of hours of sleep. When sleep we say, there is dream part plus sleep part. So I am told if this reduces sleep part, that means you can have less time of sleep and enjoy same benefits as long term. So meditation has some effect. Can you throw some light on that?
Sure. So yes, definitely. It so there even sleep has different phases. Okay, so what is called REM or rapid eye movement sleep, or so even when you sleep it goes through different phases. So you can be in this REM phase or the non-REM phase. Okay, so definitely yes, it does improve sleep. You may have therefore shorter hours of sleep, but it improves the REM sleep, which is important. Okay, you know, when you feel refreshed and rejuvenated.
Hello.
Yeah.
My name is Geeta, and I'm very interested in, recently become interested in Alzheimer's and dementia, and the occurrences are increasing exponentially and even early onset. So have any, there is no cure for this, there's no cure for dementia. Any studies done on the prevention side and meditation helping with that? Thank you.
Yeah, actually, they are advocating meditation, for the prevention. As I pointed out here, that, you know, there is a decrease, so we all lose brain cells and as we grow older, okay? And that is inevitable because the brain stem cells slow down in producing new brain cells. So some amount is inevitable, but we all need not go into dementia. So in fact, meditation does have a function of prevention of this, you know, degeneration process. Okay, so that is known, but definitely it is advocated if people who have dementia can do it. So it definitely has a beneficial role. Yeah.
Wow, we have lots of questions.
Hello, this is Jayashri. Once again, I am asking question. I'm doing meditation and I learned, and effects are very good. I started writing poetry, poems and all that after my 70s, that is different. But what I'm asking you is, life of Mumbai is so busy and certain things are keeping us very demanding. So supposing we miss meditation once or twice, what should be the schedule for the whole week? Because I want to do meditation, but really sometimes it is not possible. So what can be done?
I actually don't think it matters too much as long as you're fairly regular to do it 3 to 4 times a week. So I wouldn't feel guilty about it, you know. Don't go into guilt. Yeah.
One minute. John, after that. Later. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, my name is Vasanti. I have a question for you. There is this Vietnamese monk called Thich Nhat Hanh. So he talks of miracle of mindfulness, where he says one doesn't have to sit and meditate the way it is generally said. Even if you are doing any activity in your home, like if you are washing your utensils or you play with your child, that itself, if you are mindful, if you have mindfulness in that activity, that itself is a meditation. One doesn't have to just sit and just think of something, because many a times, like people say, your thoughts are going here and there. Your brain is like a monkey, your mind is like a monkey, it goes here and there. So you are not able to actually focus. Like if you ask a youngster, I mean, they may say that I like to dance a lot, I like to listen to music. That de-stresses me much more than meditation, because I am not able to meditate. So would you say that meditation, as it affects the brain in those ways, whether the frequency of your mind or brain, changes because you do something which is not really meditation?
Okay, so as I mentioned right in the beginning that there are various types of meditation, right? And say for example, you have Maharishi Mahesh Yogi's transcendental meditation, which is to do with just chanting a nonsense mantra. Okay, and it has to be a nonsense mantra. It has to be something that has no meaning, just some syllables. And why is that? So basically it's to really not go into thought as much as possible. Okay, so it's interrupting the random thinking, like I mentioned here, the default network, this random thinking. So that is So you may not be sitting actually, you may just be chanting that, but you are interrupting that particular flow of thought. Then you have Osho, who's had all these dancing meditations, things. So where again you are not remaining in thought, you are in the body. Okay, so definitely those have an effect, but again scientifically there is less work done. There isn't even time. Transcendental meditation actually has been studied quite a lot. Okay, but these have effects, but I can't go into all of them. But definitely yes. And as I said, if you are able to do this mindfulness activity while you're doing something else in the outer world, you're an expert meditator. If you can do it, yes, please. You don't need to sit in a place. Okay, the sitting is to enable it for those who are not expert meditators. But once you do it, it gets easier and easier, and eventually, yes, you can do it even in your daily activities.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Reema. I have been meditating for the last 7 years now. My question is that when I begin, begin with meditation, you kind of become very aware about your internal self, which is also your negative traits. And at times you can get, disillusioned, and you can actually go into that negative state. So how important it is to be meditating under the, under a group or, in a course, as somebody is mentoring you towards your meditation and not taking it up individually and practicing it. How important would that be?
I mean, science-wise, I don't know the answer to that. Okay, I don't think such a study has been done. But whether it's without a guru or with a guru, as long as you achieve that state, and the important part that I mentioned is non-judgmental. Okay, so whether it's negative or whatever comes, it's a question of just reaching that point of, whether you call it dispassionate awareness, choiceless awareness, witness. So all these things, and just letting things be. Because I think, like, people have shared their experiences when you have physical pain. Has anybody tried to do meditation when you have like a really painful knee or pain, pain in your abdomen or painful back? It's so difficult because, somewhere we have a tendency to resist pain. Okay, but the moment you are letting the pain be, you stop resisting, and it comes with that witnessing state. So I think that's what is important,
Yeah.
My name is Vinita. I just wanted to know, you're talking from the scientific and the research point, like research on what time is best for meditation. I mean, we say morning and all, but any research done in relation to this? And
so I am not aware of that. Okay, I don't remember coming across it, but I can look it up and inform, communicate that to Swamiji sometime, and I'll look that up. Yeah, I know they say that like early morning is better, but I'm not aware of the scientific data on this specifically. But I'll look that up.
We have time for a couple of more questions only.
My name is Suraj Jain. I practice meditation and yoga both every day for years. But one thing I have not found out, which is the best, because so many people come and talk about so many meditations. You also pointed out 5, 6 types. Which is the best that we should follow, and how should we decide that? Can you please enlighten on that?
No, actually, I can't. I think each person is different. Like I'll tell you, for example, there have been a number of studies on introducing prisoners, criminals. Because you would, of course, assume that when something like meditation, we are talking about meditation reducing anger, reducing fear, reducing aggression. Okay, so of course they've introduced this to criminals who are in jail, and as programs, as what we found. And what they found is that at times it worked and at times it didn't. But because see, finally, the type of people, very often the type of people that criminals are, they are very reactive, highly strung, they are mostly externalized, okay? They are reacting to the outside a lot. And of course, jails are also a very stressful environment. You know, you find that prisoners are they're almost constantly on high alert. So what they found is only meditation didn't have as much impact as doing a combination of yogic postures with meditation. Okay, so the yogasanas along with meditation, of course, because they got into something physical which was more suited to them, then had a better effect, you know. So I think it just depends on each person and the type of person you are.
Yeah, so 5, 6 times you mentioned.
Yeah.
Any particular time?
No. As I said, this talk was based on, say, what is out there in the literature. You know, it's not my personal preference, but, you know, whatever has been studied, you know, and the data that comes out. So it's that what I've presented.
One thing I just wanted to know, as I have done since 40 years, I am practicing Mahesh Yogi and Deepak Chopra's instruction about, but I am not sticking to that point only. Sometimes the words I lose and go into meditation, and sometimes I feel that I am contacting somebody, others' brain also. Sometimes, mostly family members, my son or something like that. And then I just communicate in the meditation for that improvement. And sometimes I find that works. I don't know, because since long I am doing all these things, I am having this type of experience.
Right. So of course, as I mentioned, that these are, you know, like these are what they call extraordinary phenomena. Okay, and science will have to come up with some way of studying these. Okay, so far they have not been looked at because we don't have the tools to do it in a you know, scientific manner. But one can't discount them, that these things do happen.
Thank you. May I, Doctor, that was an amazing session on how the brain functions.